I have been wanting to make this video for a long time. I kept getting sidetracked with the rest of my projects. I work a full-time job, I have a YouTube channel, and I've been trying to focus on my mental health as well. This subject brings up a lot of my past trauma too. But then I saw this video.
All you had to do was pay us enough to live. All you had to do was pay us enough to fucking live.
Well, shit. Should I do this? Probably not. It might kill my channel. But, let's just do it and see what happens. Have you noticed around YouTube how there are videos about rising restaurant prices?
Yeah, the rising prices taking a toll on owners and chefs. KPX5's Len Ramirez spoke to a restaurant owner who walked them through everything that's gone up from French fries to meat.
Fewer customers.
How many people came through the door that day?
I will have like 5 tables all day.
5 tables all day?
Yeah, it was a revenue like less than $100, I could tell you that.
Worse service.
This was going on last Sunday. While I'm waiting for them to order my food, they back at first and talking about craziness.
Smaller portions.
This bag of Doritos used to be 9 3/4 ounces, but in February 2021, it became half an ounce lighter, while the price stayed the same.
Worse food.
I've had a sense that lots of restaurants are starting to taste the same. You can be served the same exact food, but made in the same factory, whether you wanted it or not.
It seems there is a crisis in the restaurant industry. And you want to know what all of these people on YouTube lack when trying to explain their restaurant crisis? Actual experience.
Would you like smiley sauce with that?
Lester, just stop it!
No. You don't get to tell me what to do. Ever again.
Hi, I have worked at I have 20 years of food experience and I've worked at 12 different restaurants. Well, I call them restaurants, but it's actually mostly been fast food. I have worked 2 jobs for most of my adult career. I also have a college degree in business and administration, and I have a penchant for overanalyzing everything and a penchant for psychology. My senior paper in college was on subliminal messaging and how businesses attempt to use psychological tactics to make a sale. I have worked at places with some of the best standards in the industry, which I tout at Chick-fil-A. They have better standards than most sit-down restaurants and even hospitals. I have worked at other places that did $1 million in a month. I have worked 15 to 17-hour days, no breaks or lunch, nonstop, because there were literally too many customers and everyone working was literally too busy to stop. I have also worked at places with some of the worst standards in the industry, and I've worked at a place that has failed and gone out of business. It did $200 a day. Fun story, that place that went out of business, employees' checks were bouncing as they were trying to cash them out. The police specifically asked the banks to stop cashing the checks from the owners because they kept bouncing. So, I have seen both ends of how a restaurant should look when it actually cares, and the bottom of what happens when a restaurant tries to survive, and have been in a position to do absolutely nothing to fix it, while watching everything fall apart. I mean, I look like the kind of guy that has 20 years of restaurant experience. How did I get stuck in the food industry for 20 years? Well, the short story is because my brother died of cancer while I graduated college, which completely ruined all of my life goals, ambitions, and trajectories, and I was put in a constant state of anxiety and depression, living on the edge financially because I worked in the food industry to where I barely had time for myself or time to try to leave, and nobody understood what I was going through, and I wanted to kill myself the entire time, and then I just got stuck. I sound like Gen Z.
Just wanted to say, don't wait too long to follow your dreams. Working 12 hours a day for pennies while the owners and investors of the company make millions off your work. It's a miserable existence.
Another one of the main reasons it's taking me so long to make this video is because of how many problems there are in the industry. It's a big interconnected mesh of interconnected problems that aren't just food industry problems, but American problems, and potentially even worldwide problems. I'll be honest, it's pretty daunting. Even with this video, I don't think I'll be able to articulate or capture everything well. I don't even think I'll be able to get everything. This video is long, and well, it's because I have to sort out all of my thoughts while trying to make it make sense. But I please ask that you bear with me. I have a smorgasbord of vomit that I need to get out before I start connecting the dots. Now, I saw this video.
So a new study just dropped, and it has reported what we all suspected it was going to prove out, that California's $20 fast food wage has been an abject disaster for the state of California's fast food industry. And not only that, it's also had really bad impacts on the rest of the state, which, by the way, has something like a $16.90 minimum wage statewide. And the reason for this is absolutely obvious. When you try to increase the price of labor, that ends up getting passed on to the consumer. A lot of restaurants have, again, low profit margins, and in addition to that, a lack of consumption of the product, this being a more expensive fast food, ends up leading to lower revenues that has to go more and more to those higher wages. But
well, more specifically, this video.
Everything collapses. Price of labor goes up. Price of product goes up. People can't afford it anymore. People stop going to those places. Those places collapse. And then the surrounding area doesn't have the business anymore and just collapses everything. And then the city is not making the tax dollars from those people. It's like, it's just fucks everything up.
And this got me really riled up. To start, back in my 20s after graduation and while my brother was sick, I decided to work 2 jobs to try to pay off my student loans as soon as possible. I was determined to pay them off so that I could start saving and investing. Due to circumstances, I didn't pay off any of my loans, and for a brief time, I ended up working 70-hour weeks, paycheck to paycheck, and didn't pay off anything. And not working 2 jobs, sitting at a cozy computer, coding or working with clients or doing sales, it was 2 jobs of this.
Ibra, make sandwiches! Don't stop making fucking sandwiches! Yes, chef. I'm gonna make 3 sections, okay? They're gonna be wet, hot, and sweet, all right? I'm gonna take green tape, make those sections. Louis, I want you to get the sandwiches, put them in the corresponding sections. Copy?
Okay, yeah.
Yo, sweet, bag, Sharpie, label that shit, please, chef.
Yes, chef.
Martina, fire every single chicken we have, please, okay? Richie, do you even know?
The speed, the rush, the insanity. I felt trapped. And it was mostly because I lived in a tourist town and the summers were just insane. Have you ever had a panic attack, but had to keep going because stopping would mess up the entire operation, and so you just kept going while it felt like you were having a heart attack and your brain was overstimulated with anxiety? Stopping was worse than going. I was so tired and depressed during that time that very often, the moment I got home, I collapsed on the floor and just fell asleep. I couldn't afford a bed at the time, and I slept on an air mattress that kept deflating overnight. And I was working so much, and I was so tired that I literally could not find the time to find a new job. Have you ever been so poor that you couldn't look for work? I didn't have health insurance, so I often went into work sick. And I didn't have PTO, so I couldn't take time off. Even on holidays, working 7 days a week, 70 hours a week. It destroyed my relationships, as whenever a friend or family member texted me to do anything, I would have to tell them, sorry, I can't afford it. They eventually stopped trying. Why would they try when they already know the answer? I grew to hate holidays because instead of taking my 1 day off to try to relax, I had to go visit family, which just burnt me out even more. I didn't want to see them. My life was just survival at the time. How does this relate to the video on Mod Pizza about raising minimum wage and the store closing? Well, When it comes to raising minimum wage, people on the right side of the political spectrum will cite the second to third order effects or consequences that happen when a decision like that is made. I'm right-leaning. I actually agree with this. Raise wage, cost of business rises, leads to higher prices, which leads to lower sales, which leads to less labor or fewer items, which leads to worse customer service, or worse, shutting down the business altogether. This is an actual process that has been replicated and happens all the time. Okay then, if raising the minimum wage isn't the answer, what else is there? That's kind of the issue. What's the solution?
Remember the $5 footlong at Subway? Well, that's a thing of the past. This turkey sub cost me over $11. The bad news about inflation is prices aren't going to go down. The good news is the increases are slowing.
Prices in general across the economy very rarely ever come down once they've been reset higher. One of the reasons for that is wages, once they're reset higher, very rarely get pushed back down and reset lower.
So, what's the solution then? Do you lower minimum wage so that you have to work more hours to be able to pay your rent? How many more hours should we work? 60 hours? 70 hours? 80 hours a week? Should we have 2 household incomes? 3 household incomes? How many adults need to live under a roof to be able to pay rent? And the right side solution? Don't be stupid. You put yourself there, you need to get out. That's not solving the problem. That's avoiding it. During that time of exhaustion, I learned a valuable lesson. Similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if your basic needs aren't met in the first order of consequences, who cares about the second or third order? Now, you might think, tough, deal with it. That's just life. You made your choices, so you lie there. There are causes and effects to everything. There are consequences to your decisions. That's just the way society works. Life isn't fair. Well, I say tough. You deal with it. I don't have to care about you just as much as you don't have to care about me. I'm trying to pay my bills just as much as you are.
All you had to do was pay us enough to live. All you had to do was pay us enough to fucking live.
I'm sorry. I'm a little burnt out. It's messed me up. The thing about the food industry is that if we were to put all fields of industry in a tier list, the fast food industry is on the bottom. The only industry underneath is construction. Both of these are considered low-skill work that any average Joe Schmo off the street could learn if given a couple weeks, and they both have a negative associated stereotype with them. Everyone knows this. Everyone recognizes this. You don't see people rushing to get in the industry. You see people rushing to get out.
Police department. Nobody in the restroom or the stockroom. But they do find condiments and cheese left out in the open, and food that's still cooking.
Looks like the fryers are still going.
Apparently, there was a dispute among employees, and they all walked out mid-shift.
In the media, you see the Hodink Diner in the middle of nowhere. You see the maids and butlers who serve their bosses and leaders. You see the pubs and shacks in the dark alleyway. You see the broken down food trucks on the side of the road. You don't know what they do or if it's food safe, but you swear it's the best place in the market. And very often, the food industry is kind of like the last bastion of hope for people who are unemployed. Oh, you got laid off? You're homeless and need a job? Well, get a fast food job to help cover some of the bills, just for a little bit. Be the rags to riches character where you started as the dishwasher and rise to the top. This is an industry you get into when you have no other options. But just because it's low skill doesn't mean it isn't difficult. I don't think anyone really understands how difficult the industry is unless you've worked in it for a very long time. They are overworked, understaffed, underpaid, and generally everyone hates their life while doing it, and people stay there not because they want to, but because they have no other options and they can't get out. And even now, as the economy weakens, even this industry is getting harder to get into, despite how tough it is. They're putting self-serve kiosks into the stores now. What do you do if the low-level work starts getting difficult to get into? They're even testing robotics now. They're trying to put in AI. They haven't figured it out, but you're not exempt. Now here's the real question. Is the restaurant industry actually ever going to die? No. It will never truly die. However, how strong the restaurant industry is usually one of the best indicators of how well the economy is doing. If the restaurant industry is failing, well, that means that everything else is probably failing. Now, being in the industry, as long as I have, and the way that I see the industry, I've been able to see a lot of the downfall of the systems in America happening before anyone else. So, here's my perspective of the collapse of the restaurant industry and the collapse of society by someone living on the bottom.
Over the past few months, we've seen many iconic fast food and restaurants brands close, even some fully about to go out of business. We recently got news that Wendy's is set to close 300 US stores in 2026.
So I once helped at a different store in a different state, and this store closed at midnight. Since it was in the middle of a corporate city, everyone would go out to eat during the lunch rush, and the city would be empty during dinner. So the dinner rush was actually incredibly slow. The reverse of what you'd expect. After the morning rush, I went outside and I walked around a bit, enjoying the sights because I was in a completely different state. And I stumbled upon a Chick-fil-A that closed at 5 p.m. every day. Except Sunday, obviously. Now, this is important to know that Chick-fil-A closing on Sunday every single week is against industry standards. And normally Chick-fil-A closes at 10. Usually you don't change the time of closure of a restaurant unless the business standards require it. So sometimes you'll stay open later, sometimes you'll stay open earlier. It depends. So here we have a Chick-fil-A that closes at 5 p.m. and they're usually a little more hard-nosed because they go against industry standards. And our restaurant closed at midnight every night. Something here was off. And I recognized that basically after the lunch rush, for 10 hours, everyone was basically just standing around doing nothing and waiting. Literally no one came for most of the night. I emailed the owner and I suggested a compromise. Close the store at 8:30, shortly after the supposed dinner rush. And did he listen to me? No. The restaurant closed down a month later. There were some other issues, but if you want to know why it closed down, the heat sink of the dishwasher water wasn't getting up to temp because the heater was broken and the owner didn't have money to fix it. And after 2 health inspections, the health inspector shut down the restaurant. What do you do?
Things don't taste how they taste. They taste a strange combination of how they taste and how you expected them to taste.
Spence's work, particularly around taste, he'll do things like wonderful experiments where you produce something that looks like a lemon, okay, looks exactly like a bitter citrus fruit, but you flavor it with strawberry essence. And the only scientific way to describe the human reaction to this is it fucks with people's heads.
I often wonder why the store refused to change its time and fought to keep it open despite losing money. This is what I've come up with. The first reason is because the longer you stay open, the more potential cash flow that you have. And if you're in the red, having some money is better than having no money. The second reason is a little more complicated. Have you ever gone to a store and thought, wow, this store looks nice. The shelves are stocked, it's busy, the workers are doing their thing, but then you happen to stumble on an old store, the shelves are empty, it's slow, and there's one worker in the corner on their phone not paying attention and hates being there? Would you rather go to the shiny, clean, popular place or the dirty and dingy place? Look, you might be the exception. You might see the dirty and dingy place and be like, I've never been there before. That's an adventure. But you wouldn't go there consistently. Everyone wants to go to the shiny, clean place. This is an expectation. The cleaner you are, the more new you look, the busier you are, the more popular you are, then the more people will come, and that leads to more sales. More sales leads to more profit, right? It's similar to going to a busy mall instead of a slow mall. A busy mall has all the stuff. A slow mall doesn't. Congratulations, you've discovered the stock market. This same premise of perception and branding also exists in the food industry. It's all just NFTs at the end of the day.
These might look like some delicious tacos, and they are, but they've been made with cockroaches. And I'm about to serve them to some food critics.
If you look at them in that form, you think, oh my God. But if you just leave them with food on the plate, the perfect modern food.
Wine tastes better if you pour it from a heavier bottle. A restaurant wants you to drink wine. Why? Wine doesn't have a known price anchor, so you can mark it up like a bastard, okay? You can't charge £30 a glass for a glass of Johnny Walker Red because people know what that costs in the shop. But you can buy a bottle of Chateau d'Obscur for €6 and charge €30 for it, and because it's expensive, everybody will say it tastes of blackcurrant, okay? What the restaurants do is they make you think you're choosing what to drink while actually stuffing you royally. And this is how it happens. You arrive, there are wine glasses already on the table. Secondly, they bring you a drinks menu. It's not called the drinks list, it's called the wine list. And then there's the final touch, which is sheer genius. They only bring one wine list and hand it to one person. Now, there's only one drink that you can all share. So once the guy has the wine list, there's only one question you can ask the rest of the table, which is red or white.
You discover that you don't have to sell quality food. You just have to look like you sell high quality food. And the food just has to look like it's quality. And if you look like you sell high quality food, and the food looks like it's quality, then people assume that it's quality food. This is why advertisements are so misleading about their food. If it looks amazing, then you expect it to be amazing, right? However, after you buy it, well, it already worked. So it doesn't really matter what it looks like afterwards. It isn't exactly one-to-one. Not all restaurants are equal. You go to McDonald's and you expect it to look old and trashy with a fat guy in the back, maybe a Hispanic worker who can't speak English. You buy McDonald's not because it's amazing, but because it's cheap. You go to Chick-fil-A and you expect high quality service, exact perfection. You go there for their service and respect. But this leads to other things. Like Chick-fil-A, you expect it to close at 10. You expect it to be closed at Sundays. McDonald's, you expect it to be open 24/7. And then you are more surprised when McDonald's closes earlier than when it doesn't. So what does this all lead to? Branding and perception create unrealistic expectations. Because of this, brand recognition is almost more valuable than gold, and it can make or break your entire restaurant if you're not careful.
Holding a cell phone camera and a GoPro strapped to his head, this Chipotle customer is fighting back over what he says are Chipotle's shrinking portion sizes.
Can I get a bowl, please? Let's get some Chipotle.
He's part of a growing new movement. Some customers are now going into Chipotle with their camera devices recording. They believe once employees know they're being filmed, they'll dish out larger portions of food.
This goes deeper. Psychologically, if something looks full, people are more apt to buy. If something looks empty, people are more apt to turn away. When there's a buffet, you don't care about how much you take because there's plenty. When there are scraps, you're careful about what goes around and try to stretch it so you take less. Restaurants want to always look full, partially for perception, but also to always have the product available when a customer comes. Every time you don't have the thing you're selling, that is a sale lost.
This was what I had, and there was an hour left in the market. That one bunch of chard would sit there and no one would buy it. But if I had 30 bunches of chard all like bursting out, I'd probably sell like 25 of those bunches of chard. So what does that say? Like, people are totally impulse shopping, and they think if there's one left that there's something wrong with it.
So there is an incentive for bosses and restaurants to create certain expectations to build around. And these expectations create a perception that no matter what, things are okay. The system isn't falling apart. Everything is fine. This is the nature of a brand. And this happens with everything. You can't escape this. This is just the byproduct of human nature trying to establish patterns. So the only thing you can do is recognize it. It's okay for it to happen. But it's also okay to recognize when it's a problem. And this comes with the story. Once upon a time, I worked at a pizza buffet. It opened up at 11 o'clock. I realized that at this pizza buffet, we were required to put everything out. And I noticed that we were throwing away a lot of food to start because no one would come in between 11 and 12. So I made the call, hey, let's only set up the popular items first, and then we'll throw in the rest of the pizza right before the rush hour. And it took 3 to 5 minutes to cook. It wasn't an issue at all. It was slow during that time anyway. Now, when I told my district manager about this, I actually got in trouble. And he said, hey, I need you to stop doing that. I need you to make the whole buffet, make it all complete. And I asked him why. And he just says, it's just so that it can look full. Okay. Okay. Whatever you say, boss. Whatever you say. I don't think people realize how intensely competitive the fast food industry is. Sure, you can have burger versus burger, Wendy's versus McDonald's. But you can also compete with Papa John's, burger versus pizza. But they are also competing against Olive Garden, which would be fast food versus restaurant. It seems simple enough, but have you considered that they are also competing against Walmart, fast food versus grocery? Are you going to go out to eat, or are you going to go eat at home? Do you want fast food, or do you want Grandma Gertrude's famous apple pie that has been passed down from generation to generation? You can even have McDonald's versus McDonald's. Not all locations are run the same, and some people are actually willing to drive farther out because a location is operated better. Heck, Coke tries to compete with water. The thing that makes all other drinks and is 70% of what humans are made of. It's actually kind of a big problem.
Obviously, countless people are getting diabetes because of their excessive consumption of Coca-Cola. But the problem is Coca-Cola is everywhere. You find it easier than you can find water out here. The irony of these people working at the factory that produces the Coke, that causes the diabetes, that causes their death, even 6 feet under, Coke has managed to ingratiate themselves in the culture of the afterlife here. Rudy took me to a local graveyard to see this firsthand. Oh, it's everywhere out here now. Coca-Cola tied to the flowers in a 2-liter of Coke. Another can of Coke right here. Another bottle of Coke. Rudy, what's the significance of these Cokes out here?
It's about like the people, they are like bringing offerings to the cemetery. So the Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Fanta becomes part of their life. So that is why it's present in the cemetery.
Now, when you compete with a company, you want to try to, one, reverse engineer their good ideas. So like how quickly Lyft was able to get going after Uber revolutionized the industry. And then second, you try to get rid of the bad ideas. Try not to do the bad things that other corporations are doing. What this does is that restaurants start maximizing for profits. Kind of like in video games where everyone starts learning all the speed running hacks and game breaking strategies. They all start unintentionally looking and acting like each other, or worse, become each other. It's important to remember that a business is a business, not a charity. I have actually said this to people in real life. And a business is its own entity focusing on its own self to try to support itself. So what happens in the process of getting rid of the bad? A company will downsize to maximize profit and simply not care about the global ramifications of what happens if every business tries to do that simultaneously. This is the nature of a recession and a depression. It's just, it doesn't become your problem, it becomes someone else's problem. Similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if your basic needs aren't met in the first order of consequences, who cares about the second or third order? I worked in a fast casual restaurant for 6 years. Fast casual, if you want to know, is what Chipotle is. The idea is that you cook the food fresh in the kitchen, and then they serve it to you fresh in a singular line, kind of like a cafeteria work. It's supposed to be in between fast food and sit down. Now here's a question. Why would a fast casual restaurant have a drive-through? Well, it's obvious. It's to compete with fast food. But that's not what fast casual systems were designed for. And the speed necessary to make fast casual food doesn't match with the cook times of fast food. Very often when I worked in the drive-thru, I had to cheat to keep up with the times that they wanted. And very often I gave out food that was soggy or underheated. Hey, don't worry, it was already cooked it was already cooked ahead of time. We just kind of heated it up to make it hot again. But, at least it was fast. So that's one of the main reasons why drive-thrus have been getting slower, is because the restaurant wasn't literally designed for it. Now, when it comes to competition, I mentioned I have 12 restaurants under my belt. And part of the reason I put this, and I even mentioned this, is that I've learned under all this experience, being able to compare, contrast systems and how they run, that it's all basically the same. The way that their expectations are the same, the way that they hire is the same, the way that they interview is the same. Their training programs are similar, right? You watch a video and they're going to say the same information about, hey, be happy and chipper and all will be well. Be pleasant to the guest. Have a sense of urgency, so that you can get things done fast and quickly. And the workers are the same. The way they expect cleaning is the same. There's nothing really different about it. And yeah, maybe the recipes are different, right? Because, they're trying to have a brand. But the processes of how they get the food from A to B to C out the window is all so much the same. Like that it's really, I've really lost the allure and the magic of what goes on behind the scenes. And it's actually really frustrating too. My current job, I had to switch out to a completely different department because I kept trying to tell them, hey, look, these are your problems, these are your issues, your expectations are too high, and they didn't listen to me. They're still struggling, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. You do what you do. Create a system that's impossible to complete. Don't be surprised that it doesn't work out.
Here's what happens. Cook lasagna and it doesn't sell. You throw it away? No, we don't throw it away. We wrap it.
I'm here to help, but I tell you what, I can't help you when you're standing there and trying to come up with excuses to why customers pay good money for frozen shit that cooked a week ago and you call it a special.
We don't feel like it puts out an awful product.
You don't give a shit about food.
It's not true.
Your passion's about portion control, measurements, frozen foods reheated in a microwave. Restaurants don't run like this.
Disagree.
I disagree with that also, definitely.
Trust me, you are not a fucking restaurateur.
I once worked at a job that used to cook everything in-house. However, they recently switched to a home kitchen system. They opened up a separate facility where they cooked everything fresh there, froze it, and then they had Sysco come pick it up and Sysco would deliver it to all the stores in the area. It's basically one step below, like, factory made and manufactured. It's still technically made with fresh ingredients, but it's still frozen. Food generally doesn't have a long shelf life. Unlike the rest of the country where you can hold supplies basically indefinitely until forever. For things to be considered fresh, food has a 3-day shelf life. However, if it's held for longer, like a sauce or juice or something, this shelf life can change. And it can very easily change depending on a couple of different things. One, it can change based on when the product actually spoils. So like with milk, you don't want to drink spoiled milk. The second is how much the flavor changes after a certain time. So, yeah, maybe the food isn't actually bad, but sometimes if it looks like it's bad, then people won't buy it, and then it gets thrown away anyway. And then lastly, it can also change depending on what the owners and the CEO decides it should be. If you're not entirely sure if it has a shelf life, well, it's safer to have a shelf life than to not have a shelf life. One job I worked at, we had a restaurant recipe that was literally only mustard and mayonnaise. That's it. Corporate gave it a 7-day shelf life, but my kitchen manager said, nah, we're going to do 30. Mustard itself has a very long shelf life, and the way they package mayonnaise from a store, it has a much longer shelf life than it has any right to be because of all the preservatives in it. So we stretched the truth a little. And that's a small detail that everyone misses. The shelf life of an item doesn't have to be when the food actually spoils. One job I worked at, tap water had a 15-day shelf life, for example. The best way to describe the shelf life of a product, it's a necessary evil, or even, dare I say it, an alternative fact. I once helped a hoarder clean up their house around 2015. It was awful. But she said she worked at a soda canning facility in the past, and she had a box of Sprite from the 70s and offered it to me. She said that due to how they canned soda, it never truly expired, and offered the box to me. Well, I drank the whole thing, and I didn't get sick, and I didn't die. And it tasted like Sprite. So that was like 10 years ago. It hasn't affected me since, so at least I hope it hasn't. But I figured it was similar to how they ultra-pasteurize milk. Basically, if milk is heated up to a specific temperature quickly, it can kill all the bacteria without causing it to curdle or spoil. And if it's packaged properly right after, it can stay outside the fridge as long as it's not opened. Like all of those protein shakes you see at store on display. But things will eventually spoil, and so companies will place a date on there just to be safe. The reason why I mention all of this is that there is an allure for a restaurant to freeze items to help save on cost. There are two main reasons why. By selling frozen, you dramatically expand the shelf life of items. This creates consistency and dramatically lowers food waste, which then saves the store money. Frozen items technically don't have a shelf life, even on the list that you see online. You can serve it whenever and it won't kill you. Frozen items get freezer burn, and what happens is that the refrigerant flavor of the freezer soaks into the item, and the ice clusters form on it and destroys the texture. I've tried it before. I do not recommend it. It's awful. Now, while it's nasty, it's still technically edible. Shelf life is about 6 months to a year, depending on the item, but that's just the flavor. And another interesting fact about that is that the reason why the ice clusters destroy the flavor is that ice expands, and when ice gets into blood vessels, the water expands and destroys the blood vessels, so it gets a weird, tough, grainy texture. So this happens with ice cream, actually. This is why ice cream, when it's refrozen, doesn't taste as good as when you first get it from the store, is because the ice clusters are bigger, and so it doesn't feel as smooth or creamy, and so it just tastes different. It's actually the same science as why melted chocolate is different than hard chocolate. So, flavor illusions, food illusions. Didn't know you had those, did you? The second perk of switching to frozen is that you can produce mass amounts in bulk. Making items in bulk increases your speed quite a bit, and in the process saves the restaurant labor. Making one item of 10 different things at a time takes longer than making 10 of the same item. The reason being is because in between each step, you have to take time to clean and set up for the next procedure. If you want to guess what is probably frozen in a restaurant, pick the items that the restaurant is not known for, because those items don't really sell. It's best to keep it frozen so it lasts longer. For example, if you go to McDonald's restaurant and they sell fish sandwiches, do you think they are serving you fresh fish from the ocean? No, you know 100% it's frozen. It has to be. Fresh fish can be stored for roughly 7 to 10 days depending on the fish if it comes in directly, and you don't want to go any farther than that. Bad fish is incredibly dangerous. It's the most dangerous of the three main meats. Beef, chicken, fish. Bad fish is the most dangerous. And often, you'll put a 3 to 5 day shelf life on it just to be safe. Again, it depends on the fish. It also depends on where you live. Now, and not only that, fresh fish is incredibly expensive. So they aren't going to order a lot of fish unless they know they are absolutely sure they can sell it. Now, in my experience, some common items that are frozen that you may not be aware of: fish and shrimp, which we discussed, fresh baked cookies, the ones like at Subway or Jersey Mike's or Firehouse Subs. The dough usually comes frozen, and then it's baked in the oven on an as-needed basis. It's called fresh because it was baked that day. And this also includes desserts and pastries. Some places it includes rolls. It's not universal, but no, it's a general practice. Gluten-free items. These items go horribly slow and are incredibly expensive for what they are. I have sold gluten-free items for over a year before because just of how slow they went. And the sad truth is that they are often restocked as an as-needed basis. I'm sorry if you can't have wheat. You got to have something, I guess. But if you choose gluten-free, just be wary of where you get it from. Again, it won't kill you, but there's a chance that it hasn't been rotated. Chicken patties, chicken strips, chicken nuggets in any fast food restaurant, unless they serve like specifically chicken strips, maybe like only chicken strips, maybe. But most of the times it comes in frozen, and the reason why is that chicken has a very short shelf life, and it's usually mass produced. So you can't store chicken very well because of how fast it spoils, not necessarily because of how much they go through. Not only that, chicken is also dangerous. You can't cook chicken medium well. That kills people. Now, what's the point of all this? In general, when a restaurant struggles to stay open, it will start implementing policies that will help save itself money. However, in the process of doing that, they will start hitting the quality of the food. The longer you can have the food last, the less food waste you have, but the worse quality it will have because of this. Every company does this at some level, unless you're a 5-star restaurant. Now, I used frozen food as an example, but there's actually a more common example, and that is simply switching ingredients from one to the other. Not all ingredients are the same. I once worked at a place that used burger patties that was a mix of ground beef, ground brisket, and ground short rib. As it was struggling to stay in business, it switched to frozen Walmart patties to stay afloat. We were charging $15 burgers with frozen Walmart patties. Oh, and this premise of trying to save money also affects portions. The smaller the food, the more you can save, and every little bit adds up. And honestly, restaurants aren't the only place to look at. If you look in supermarkets, be careful what you buy. Your great value olive oil isn't 100% olive oil. You have to buy the really expensive stuff if you want the real stuff. Oreos have taken the cream out of their white center to make it vegan friendly. But what did they use to replace it? Your ice cream may not be 100% cream, but cream flavored. I once worked at a place where their wheat bread was just white flour mixed in with some molasses to turn it brown. It wasn't true wheat. And now you know why every restaurant is switching to Sysco. Like, it's not just because Sysco is a super conglomerate that controls the shipping lines of how food goes from one to the other. Restaurants are also trying to save a buck. Like, you can have these two things be true at the same time. Like,
What's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? I guess it's so many days working on the road.
You okay? You okay?
Not really.
Huh?
I don't feel good, but I need to continue.
Come here. 2 seconds. Leave that. Come here. You. On the stove. Come here. Sit down. Can you get me some water, please? Somebody. Sit down. Yeah, it's not right in there, Carlos. This is not normal.
I need a little break, yeah.
I've got your back. But this guy needs to understand what he's done to you.
I don't think people realize how insane the workload is at a restaurant. Yeah, making and prepping food is one thing, but what about all of the cleaning, the customer service, and the cooking itself, despite the fact that corporate wants it all done at a certain time? And it doesn't help that you have food and safety regulations that bear down on top of you as well. I mean, those are okay. You don't want someone to get food poisoning, but it just adds to the stress. One location I worked at, every Sunday was a complete nightmare. So the franchise based their labor matrix on the general area and the previous year's sales. And if you want to know what the labor matrix is that is the allotted amount of hours that you can be given during a day and during a certain week. So it determines how many people you can have on a certain day. Now, in our area, our Sundays are particularly slow. So generally, it worked for Sundays, except the one that I worked at. The one I worked at was near an intersection, so people would stop there to eat on their way to vacation and on their way home. Now, generally, because every Sunday was slow, it worked. But for us, I don't know why they said it this way, it was a complete and total nightmare. This means that in a fast, casual restaurant, which is open kitchen, I was serving food, being a cashier, and checking the floor while there was a line out the door. And we were taking DoorDash and doing takeout orders on the main line because we were too understaffed to be able to open up its own section. And it was really frustrating because we'd have a line out the door and I'd have to tell a customer, hey, sorry about this. Give me a moment while I do the DoorDash order, and spend 5 minutes trying to do the DoorDash order real quick and then go back and do it. And it was just insane, and it was a lot. And then I don't know why corporate ran it that way, and I don't know why they cared so much. Do you know how awkward it is for a customer to come up to you while you are finishing an order at the register to ask for a towel to wipe the table because they see that you are understaffed, overworked, and too busy to get to it? And then I would stop helping the next customer to quickly wipe off the table, even though I had a line out the door. And then the trashes would be full and people wouldn't be able to throw away trash, and they would just start piling it on the floor next to it, and nobody could get to it because everyone was too busy helping customers. And I'm inserting this halfway. I've come to the conclusion that an open kitchen is an awful design because the idea is that you want to put on a show and a presentation of how the food goes out. Well, yeah, it sounds nice in theory because if people are coming in and watching how you make the food, then people are like amazed by the process. But it also can backfire intensely because, yeah, sure, they may see all of your successes, but they also see all of your failures. And if you're behind, scrambling, trying to keep up, yelling at everyone, trying to go faster and make the food and do everything that you can, and everyone's rushing around, it doesn't become a show. It becomes like Fear Factor. It's just a stupid system, and it's more trouble than it's worth. And as the economy tightens, I think restaurants are going to see that eventually. And maybe they'll be okay with it, but the reality of how everything works behind the scenes is going to break people's brains. My longest shift ever was a 20-hour shift. No breaks, and I didn't eat lunch until around 7 p.m., so it was 12 hours straight. And in short, it was too busy and understaffed. The previous night, the dishwasher left early for an emergency. And so, as a manager, I got there at 8 a.m., helped open and work the line, and it was too busy. And so, I didn't get back there until roughly 6:30 p.m. And then I started doing dishes until 4 a.m. the next morning. I had to do that day's dishes and the previous day's dishes. I think I still have the video, actually. Yo, I'm at work. Story. Last night, the dishwasher just had to leave early. And usually Sundays, we don't have a morning dish. And I've been behind because I've been trying to play catch up. So this is all the dishes I got. I got some over here too. I'm going to be here forever. Also, the amount of pieces to try to interpiece together to try to make everything as fast as possible. You've got 10 orders, fries, pickles, chips, burgers, buns, all with different modifications, with different cooking times. And you had several people call out, so you have to do it all yourself. Trying to keep in mind what orders you are making, where they go, what orders go with what, while also managing the incoming orders as well. You want the food to get out as fast as possible, not just for the customer's sake, but also for your sanity. You don't want to do with angry bosses, or worse, angry customers.
One customer wasn't loving his customer service. 27-year-old Anthony Ellsworth is now charged with 3 counts of aggravated assault, and police say he hopped out of his car with a gun. MPD says the manager immediately closed the drive-thru window and frantically told employees to run to the back.
And then having to clean everything afterwards. Like, compare it to an office job or even a warehouse job. It's the end of the day, your shift is almost done, and you're waiting for the clock to hit your time. Instead of sitting and staring at the clock, you look around and think, well, I still have to clean the entire restaurant. And then if you don't clean it in time, or because it was extra busy and you didn't get to the pre-closing procedures because the corporate wants you to get out at a certain time, you get in trouble because you're out later than you're supposed to. Like, what do you prefer? Do you prefer it to be clean, or do you prefer you to get out on time? And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Slower restaurants are harder to run than busy restaurants. Mostly. It's like this graph here. At first, it's really easy because you have no one to deal with. That place I worked at that did $200 a day, only place I was allowed to be on my phone the entire time because everything was being done. However, this then skyrockets. Why? Well, the fewer people you have, the more you have to multitask positions. Times get slower and quality dips the harder the individual has to work to maintain it. The more you multitask, the more difficult it becomes to be efficient. Eventually, though, it hits a point where to keep up with the demand of sales, you have to hire more people. And as more people are hired, you can divvy them into different positions and increase the speed and effectiveness of the restaurant. Then eventually, past a certain point, the difficulty spikes up again. All of the positions have been filled, and you start losing efficiency because you start running into each other. You can only have so many dishwashers in a certain amount of space. There is a maximum number of workers you can have to keep the operation running without eventually just running into each other. And I think this is something that really frustrates me because as the economy weakens and as everything starts falling apart, as businesses hire less, as they start hiring less people and wanting less people to run the systems, people are being required to multitask more positions. But the more you have to multitask, the harder the job becomes. And eventually it hits a point where you can't maintain that level of effectiveness without sacrificing something in the process. And right now, corporate is thinking, oh, I can sacrifice customer service. That's probably not what they're thinking. They're thinking they want everything to be maintained. They think that they can maintain their standards while having fewer people to maintain it, or having worse people maintain it, but you can't. You can't. Everything is just going to fall apart eventually. And you have to sacrifice something somewhere. You can't have it all. I hate bureaucracy. Every business has it. And the food industry does as well. And the problems are probably going to be really similar. One time I sat in a meeting where the area manager came down and he was trying to show all the managers the proper way of how to bag food items so that it would be able to go home as hot and as fresh as possible, as if that was the core issues of their problems. At the time, I was just a trainer, which I actually used to be an assistant manager, but had to step down for health reasons. And I was being paid $14 an hour. A trainer was one step below a shift lead. And this was in 2024, and $14 an hour was the max of what they paid before becoming a shift manager. Anyway, during this meeting, I saw a store manager stand up and start asking questions. The basics of like, what about this? And what about this? What about this scenario? The area manager looked at him, stood up, and told him directly, "This is the system now. I need you to listen and to follow. We're doing this." And it was corporate speak for shut up and listen. The store manager sat down. He didn't want to lose his job. Managers have an important role, making sure that money comes in and that everything is well paid for. Rent, utilities, paychecks, legal fees, insurance, and establishing where profits go and what direction the company should take.
And that's basically the job description. Pick the team, set the culture, decide what business you're in, decide where the money goes, and be the face of the company when things go to shit.
I have a saying. The higher up you go in the company, the more you bury the business. If that's the contract you want to have in your life, that's fine. But it does come with a trade-off that people pretend doesn't exist. The higher up you go, the more power you are given, and the more responsibility you are given. You make a decision, and you shift a million moving parts into your vision. The less power you have, the less you have to worry about the problems if something goes wrong. So, I'm not a raging libtard that decries capitalism.
My choice! My choice! My choice!
I think capitalism, not a good system, but it's better than any other system we have. And so, you have SJWs working as a Starbucks employee, going out complaining about Elon Musk and his ethics and moral code, which they might be bad, but Elon is building rockets and flying into space. You can't tell Elon it's not rocket science, because he is literally doing rocket science.
Most of us are paycheck to paycheck. We can't afford to go out and buy new shoes, new pants, and new shirts. We need a livable wage.
In a statement to NBC News, Starbucks said, quote, "It would be more productive if the union would put the same effort into coming back to the table that they're putting into protesting wearing black shirts to work."
Am I going to believe the Starbucks barista who can barely get up on time, or Elon Musk who is building rockets? If you're an employee working at a restaurant and someone decides to sue the restaurant because they got sick, are you, the employee, going to be the one to pay the legal fees? No, it's the employer. However, due to human nature, there is a max capacity for how many relationships we can have and how close the relationships can be. Eventually, no matter how hard you try, you become a statistic somewhere. It's impossible to avoid this. Generally, the further separated the top workers, so the billionaires, and the low-level workers are, the less they talk to each other. The less these two sides talk to each other, the less these two sides understand each other. And unfortunately, it's uneven. The bosses are the ones who have stayed with the business and have the most power and responsibility to change the systems. Therefore, they get more of the blame when something goes wrong. They pay the legal fees if somebody gets sick. So you have this effect where the CEO, CFO, CTO, and or the board of directors will see a bad number on a spreadsheet, make a decision that tries to fix it, and change the direction of the company. That decision goes down to the area managers, where they try to enact the policy changes. That decision goes down to the district managers, where they enact the policy changes, which then goes down to the store managers, where they enact the policy changes, which then goes down to the employee. And there can be more managers in between depending on the size of the corporation. By that point, when an employee asks why it's necessary to perform said action, the response is, well, because that's what the big bosses want. Do it or you're fired. The CEO has the vision of what the company should do and become. But the workers on the bottom not only do not understand why it's implemented that way, but if you're low enough, often don't care. And if you don't get paid enough, shouldn't have to care. And one of the reasons, by the way, why I'm capitalist, this process of information going from management to management and this trickle-down effect of policy, you're never going to change this process. It's just in socialism or communism, the motivations change. And the deeper reason is we like nice things. And if we not want nice things, we have to have systems to run the nice thing. But that's a separate video. However, this does explain why the police will follow whatever bureaucracy happens to be in power at the time. I put this in here because the food industry isn't a magical entity that doesn't have these problems. The food industry also deals with these problems. The problem with the food industry is that this deals with food. The thing that you live off of. If they can't figure this out, it's going to become very problematic to a lot of people. And it's going to kind of destroy a lot of the systems in place.
Deploy the Galactic Militia and declare martial law.
Yes, sir. What should I pay them with?
Their payment is the honor they'll feel to serve their... Wait, who's paying me to yell at this guy?
I can answer that. For money.
Thank you. Boy, what be wrong with these managers at McDonald's? Every time you come here, somebody got an attitude. Bye. I'm loving it. That's what you supposed to be on. You act like you don't even like your job. What you looking crazy for, Jalen? Now, every time you come in here, if y'all don't like y'all job, then just say that maybe your booty too heavy. Shit.
Remember how I said that the food industry is at the bottom of the business industry tier list? Well, this is one of the reasons why. The industry is famous for hiring teenagers, illegal immigrants, and all the outcasts and vagabonds of society. And for some weird reason, everyone is okay with that. I worked in the past as an assistant manager at a pizza buffet, the one that I actually mentioned earlier. And there, every worker actually smoked weed. This is poignant because technically it's illegal to smoke weed while working at a place. And if you're a manager, you're supposed to let someone go if you catch them doing it. However, remember, I was working 2 jobs at the time. This area that I lived in, everyone smoked weed. And not only that, even my district manager, he used medicinal marijuana for his joints. So, I don't smoke, I don't drink, and it put me in a weird situation where I could let everyone go, but how long would it take for me to find somebody who didn't smoke? And do I just work understaffed the entire time through summer? Or do I just turn a blind eye? So, as long as the job got done, I didn't care. And I'll tell you what, I had some people come into work completely and totally baked. But during rush hour, with lines out the door, they pulled through. And since it wasn't a problem, I didn't say anything. And so, that's kind of something you have to realize is I've worked with gang members, I've worked with prostitutes, I've worked with illegal immigrants. I've worked with teenagers. I've worked with the disabled. I have worked with a lot of different kinds of people. And the food industry is one of the few places that will hire these kinds of people. And it's more out of necessity than it is anything else. It's a byproduct of having incredibly cheap wages. And it's very interesting because you'll have teenagers working alongside people like Quagmire, and society will say, well, it builds character, and it's an entry-level job. And it's one of the reasons why I struggle getting out of it. It's because, well, the food industry has all these kinds of people. And it's really frustrating because I mentioned the bureaucracy before. And I mentioned how, with great power, the more power you have, the more responsibility you have. Therefore, you should get more of the blame. But just because you are a low-skill worker doesn't mean you don't get any blame, right? The less you care about the work you do, the more problems are going to arise. I think the problem is that because people are getting so worked over now, and social media and mental health and education, people are just starting to not care about how the systems are run. And when you have a society that doesn't care, well, then you have a system that doesn't care. And eventually the pieces are going to break.
I've worked a few shitty jobs before. I know how bad it can be, but that doesn't give you an excuse to be a shitty worker.
So I have a saying, and you might disagree with me. No matter what happens, you should always care about the work that you do. You don't have to like your job. You can hate your job. You don't have to like the people. But you should always try to do your best work. Not necessarily because of the return on investment, but because how good of a job you do is a reflection of the kind of person that you are. The more you care about the work that you do, the more you will care about the people around you. And if you don't care about the work that you do, then you're not going to care about the people around you. And societies are built around people, not individuals. So in order for systems to run, you need a people who care about the system. That's why I put this section in, is because now we have employees who just no longer care. We have people who no longer care. And because of that, everything is just slowly getting worse and worse. It's not just the big guys not paying enough, though they should. That's part of the reason why people don't care. It is also coming from the bottom.
We're going to show you that video. This is the video that sparked a police investigation. You can see the employee that we've identified in court documents as Kaylee Marie Santos stuffing French fries into her mouth and then putting them in a fry carton as a coworker laughs along.
Like, you can have these two things be true at the same time. Like,
Get my money, man. You don't own nothing, man. You are $8 an hour worker. You don't own leave the store. You don't own nothing. Don't come back. You own nothing. Do not come back to the station. You don't own nothing, man. Don't come back to the station. Police will come next time. Shut the up and suck it. Shut the up and suck it.
I don't know what's happened, but customers have just gone completely insane. I'm actually pro self-serve kiosk. I don't want to deal with you guys anymore. And look, just to be specific, most customers are pretty good. Generally, employees just go throughout their day not having to deal with anything. But it only takes that one customer. And for some weird reason, that one customer has just gotten worse.
They have put in too much trouble over here. They have broken the window.
And I don't know what the change has been. There have always been rude customers. But for some reason, those customers are just worse than what they used to. And not only that, people have just gotten used to it. It's not okay. And I don't know. I have theories about why it's gotten worse, and they're deep and over analytical. It has to deal with education and social media. And everyone sees it, and everyone recognizes it, and everyone knows it. And it's not something that's going to go away. There are always going to be the bad customers with the bad experience because you made that one random mistake at that one time, and then you feel guilty because you accidentally made the mistake. But like, why are the blow-ups? Why is it just getting worse? Did you think I was done? I have so much more to say. Before I talked about all of the problems I saw that are happening within the industry, now I kind of want to talk some overarching things that are affecting the industry from the outside. And it's only going to be the economy and education. I could talk about government policy, but ironically, it does have an effect, but a lot of that was kind of mentioned in bureaucracy, and it's all the same stuff there. And I could talk about social media, but the problem with social media is that a lot of the problems it creates already existed in the past. It's just intensified. So it's not like anything you haven't seen before, or recognize, or know about, or experience just by being on the internet. You're not going to learn anything new from that. But the economy and education, those are having drastic effects.
$50K income, make $3K a month after taxes, spend $2,750 on living, save $250 a month, $150K income, $8,500 a month after taxes, living expenses $5K, save $3.5K, $300K income, $16,000 a month, living expenses $6K, save $10K. The $150K guy makes 3x of what the 50 guy makes. But he saves 14 times as much. The 300K guy makes 6x the 50K guy, but he saves 40,000 as much. This example shows how people at the bottom are trapped by cost of living and can't save for shit. They will literally never escape wage slavery. Add compound interest and the gap becomes even wider.
All right. I think when you see this, you're probably going to think I'm going to be talking about numbers. Not necessarily. I'm going to be talking about how the economy itself is impacting how the work is being done. Now, in general, the economy impacts everything. But on a deeper level, the economy is a reflection of the purchasing decisions of everyone. So technically, the economy is everything. Remember, big bosses are the ones with the responsibility because they have the power to change how the system functions. And they, usually based on the numbers, will make the decisions and create programs of what the workers should or shouldn't do. Unfortunately, office work is very different than ground work. And in the process of doing this kind of desk work, it's really easy to lose track of how much work this actually requires.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
I actually talked to one of the secretaries of the VPs at my current job, and I mentioned was working there, and she was like, I tried doing this, and you guys have it tough. I could never do it. And that frustrating. Like, how can you make changes to the system if you don't even understand how the system operates? And this kind of disconnect is happening everywhere. I now work in a supermarket, and recently the company revamped the system in my department to try to make the work easier. And it was effective. However, in the process of trying to make the work easier, they also tried to require less labor, meaning there was fewer people to run it. And remember this graph I mentioned? Our store is busy, but it's not the busiest store. And because no one understands that slower stores are harder than busier stores, when you make a change, and if you make that change at a test location where things you earn enough sales, you get enough money, you have the right staffing, it's a lot easier to scale that up towards a busier store with more staff. It's exponentially harder to scale it downwards. Now the store never hits their target numbers, and the place is always filthy, and none of the executives understand how or why to fix it. And it's frustrating because I've lived through this so many times, and I know why, but I can't say anything because I'm just a pawn. And now, I mentioned the trickle-down effect of policy. The thing is that there's also a trickle-up effect of policy. And the problem with the trickle-up effect is that usually the CEO requires that if you have a dispute, take it with your manager. Okay, so if I have a dispute, I'm going to bring it up to my store manager, who then should bring it up to my district manager, who then brings it up to the area manager, and so on and so on. And the issue is it's like a game of telephone. I bring it up, they might forget, they might not view it as a priority, they might just see it as just another complaining employee. And that all gets lost in noise. So I have a fun story where one time I went out of my way and actually emailed the VP directly and broke all the rules in the process. And it's frustrating because nothing changed, because it's a numbers game. It's not a labor game. So the department is still a mess. And this disconnect between communication is happening everywhere. And I think the most poignant example is with how AI is getting pushed onto society by the government and billionaires when the rest of society doesn't want it.
The drama surrounding the proposed 40,000-acre data center campus in Box Elder County continues to intensify. Yesterday, project investor Kevin O'Leary was on Fox News and accused two groups in Utah who oppose the center of being funded by the Chinese government.
It's like executives just kind of do it. And then because they have the control and are able to circumvent the system, they make the system happen. It's not like Utah doesn't have its own water issues.
Meaning that the Great Salt Lake has been experiencing an annual water deficit of 1.2 million acre-feet of water for years now, which of course is primarily what's driving the lake's shrinkage.
So the reason why I put all of this information under the economy is that the economy is the reason why all of this is happening. Since there is this communication gap, the expectations of the big bosses are just going to get higher. And the problem is that as the expectations increase, they're going to want it to happen with less people. And when you have it with less people, you're going to get less quality, slower times, and dirtier establishments. And then they're going to try to reorient the system to try to keep everything in the green. The thing is that all of this has been happening in the food industry for decades, like before COVID even. And it's just now everything is starting to catch up to what the restaurant industry has been experiencing for the longest time. Why do you think the wages have been so low for the longest time? Why do you think they got rid of the dollar menu before COVID? Like, why is Netflix putting advertisement in paid subscriptions? Like, all of this is happening because of the economy. It's not just a single isolated event. And my overall theory is that the executives simply just don't want their paychecks to change. They don't want to harm the board of directors' investments. So instead of affecting their own pocketbooks or making sure that their money stays in the green, they reorient everything underneath. Cut out the deficiencies, cut labor, and make it happen. The problem is that you can't do that. It's possible to become too efficient. There are too many hours in the day, and workers, they can only handle so much before they start breaking. And when they start breaking, you can't predict what a broken employee will do.
All you had to do was pay us enough to live. All you had to do was pay us enough to fucking live.
So, similar to how I talked about the economy and how I didn't necessarily talk about numbers, I'm not going to be explaining education and the schools and systems there. I'm going to be talking about how the education system is starting to affect the food industry. And I say starting, but it's been happening for a while. Now, schools indirectly put individuals into two camps. Those who are successful and have high-paying jobs, and those who aren't. There's exceptions to everything. Just because you don't go to school doesn't automatically mean that you can't get a successful, high-paying job. But your chances increase by quite a bit. And a lot of it is dependent on how much you care, ironically. So the problem is that education system is now failing, just to be straightforward. And if you have this situation where you're splitting the people into two camps, where you have those who are successful and make it because they care, and those who don't because they didn't, you're actually going to get two camps, and you're going to create basically two societies and two economies. And the problem is that if you have a populace who, 1, don't care, 2, can't read, and 3, are becoming more impulsive, and you thrust them into the food industry, you're going to get a populace that doesn't care about the rules. And, that's going to be universal everywhere, but the food industry hires all the outcasts. And you have to remember, this is dealing with your food, the things that keep you alive.
The kids can't read, write, or remember anything or use their imaginations, and the teachers are wondering why. Parents are confused with why our children are coming home with these crazy grades or not knowing how to do their homework, so then we can't help them because they don't know how to tell us what the hell they're doing in class.
This isn't my story, but a friend of mine who worked at a different restaurant, he quit because the manager and the employees didn't know the freezing temperature of water and didn't know the boiling point of water. And because of that, they didn't know how to store their food correctly. And if all of that's happening, then you can assume they don't know how hot they need to cook their food in order to set it out. That's really bad. So we're finally starting to put everything together. I still have a lot to say, so it's not quite over. But hopefully, if you've seen through everything, you're going to start recognizing where and why all of the issues are being put into place, and what it's leading to, and what it's creating, and some of the hidden problems that people pretend don't exist. So I'm going to say that one of the slickest cheats that I've ever done is that the towel man stopped coming. At one of the locations I helped at that was going out of business, what happens is that usually a restaurant will hire a separate company to swap out dirty dish rags for you so that you always have clean rags. It's very common. However, what do you do when the towel man stops coming? It's better to have clean towels than dirty towels, right? Well, we started putting the towels in the dishwasher. Technically, this is against food and safety regulations. One, the food can stick inside the towel, so it may not be 100% clean. The other, you don't want to have dishwater onto clean tables, and very often the dishwater in the dishwashers is recycled, so it doesn't always have, it's not always 100% like pure clean water every time. But when you don't have towels, what do you do? Right? What do you do?
Well, who cleans this? Good. When was the last time you cleaned it?
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months. But it needs to be cleaned once a week.
I have to let you know, do you know how often I've cleaned the hood vent? Very rarely. And I'm usually one of the people who would actually try. What Gordon Ramsay is doing is actually really high standard type thinking. And honestly, what the guy is saying is actually really standard. 3 months is actually pretty decent because usually the restaurant will hire a hood vent cleaning company to clean the hood vents because it's required by state law and they want to uphold it to fire code. So it's actually not bad that he's doing it every 3 months. And here's the thing, Gordon Ramsay is right too. It actually should be cleaned once a week. Cleaning is lower on the priority list. They would rather everyone get out than everyone stay behind to clean everything once a week. It's very frustrating. And what Gordon Ramsay is saying about the hood vents is absolutely true because you don't want bad buildup because it can increase the chance of fires, and that's also a good chance of bacteria spreading. If a customer sees the buildup, it also looks nasty and can change the perception of the restaurant. So what's happening is that every restaurant is cheating somewhere. Everyone. Somewhere. But one of the things to go first is cleanliness of the store. And the reason why is because to save on money, they would want people to get out on time. To get out on time means that no matter what, you're going to have to sacrifice something to make sure you get out on time. And usually the first thing is cleaning because at the end of the night, if suppose you have a line, suppose somebody calls out and you're behind, you're not going to get all the cleaning done. And it only gets exacerbated by the fact that you have teenagers who don't care about how clean the place is. And about all the other people who I've mentioned, the outcasts who don't care as well. It requires people who care about getting the cleaning done. And it sucks because normally I'm the one who cares and I'm tired of it. Like I have gone down on my knees to clean poop out of a drain because no one else would do it. I have spent hours overnight gaining special permission to be able to clean the hood vents, to clean the air vents. The amount of cleaning that is required is just insane. One of the biggest cheats that happens everywhere. So there is something called first in, first out. You want to be able to rotate the food so that the older food goes out first so that you keep everything as fresh as possible. However, if I was behind, instead of putting things away properly, I would just put it on the shelf as fast as I could because I was just trying to get the job done. Like the tighter things become, the more difficult it is to maintain the standards. It just feels like people don't get it and don't understand that. Oh, it's messed me up. And I've gone through those phases. Like, I used to care dramatically and want to be like the most intense person ever. And then I went through a phase where I was like, it's okay. I don't have to care. And then I was like, you know what? We're going to reestablish standards. Things are going to be good. And then I got beaten down again to just not caring again. And so it's like, again, I've seen both sides. I've seen how a system runs well and how nice it is when you're able to actually get everything clean. But when you're in a restaurant that just doesn't care, and when I try to tell people, hey, look, man, I would care more if they gave me time to care more, I probably would. But no one gives me the time. No one gives me the resource. I'm sorry. I'm crashing out a little bit. So now everything is fake. You got fast food executives trying to pretend to be 5-star restaurants as if they aren't trashy and dissident, pretending that they aren't doing shrinkflation in all of their products. I had a job where they started hiring managers who couldn't speak English. Food commercials show these pristine burgers of quality and perfection, and then you go to the store and it looks like absolute garbage. You have ghost kitchens, ghost applications, ghost jobs, ghost resumes, and you get ghosted. And with AI making it more difficult, AI is being used to filter out job applications, and then AI is being used on resumes. This AI sifting creates a scenario where everyone puts on a fake persona to get a fake job with a fake interview, and everyone pretends that their job is the best place ever. The food is fake, the customer interaction is fake, employee interaction is fake, manager interaction is fake. It's all just fake. And this is all exacerbated by social media, where everyone wants the most views, the most clicks, and the best way to do that is through the most drama. And the answer to social media isn't to avoid it, is you have to play the games. Social media is just advertising at the end of the day. This YouTube video is advertising at the end of the day. Like even making this video, I clipped out sections that I thought weren't as well put together. And if you don't play the social media game, then you just disappear and become irrelevant. And I think it's worse being forgotten than not playing the game at all. And this is why social media marketers pretend to be just like all of you. It's all perception and branding at the end of the day. If the restaurant has to compete, it has to pretend it's a 5-star restaurant. Because if it doesn't, then it gets lambasted and canceled. McDonald's CEO took a bite of the Big Arch Burger.
All right, the moment of truth.
One small bite for man.
That's a big bite for a big arch.
One giant controversy for the internet.
And then Burger King took a bite of its burger to dunk on McDonald's.
Not bad, right?
Only one thing missing. A napkin.
That's how you eat a big juicy burger. You let it splatter all over the place. You get it all over your mouth, and you're
Big
like,
chomping
"This
bite."
is awesome." So that's the president of U.S. Burger King, Tom Curtis.
And then everyone did it afterwards.
That is so good.
I took a big bite for a big arch.
Now the CEOs of McDonald's fast food rivals are joining in the fun.
And it's not like any of this didn't happen before. Like, all of these games happened before. It's different now. It's all a game of who can sound the best to get the most attention so that they can get the most money. That's all that it boils down to. So for this section, I have 2 stories that I need to share, but they're both pretty lengthy. And it'll make sense after I share them, so bear with me. For the first one, I'll explain artificial sales. So the restaurant that closed down, and I should be a little bit more specific, it was a franchise. I'm just trying not to give out any names. Anyway, this restaurant, they had a pizza place that I also worked at, and I really loved it because it was a brand new concept. Scratch made. We made scratch made pizza, scratch made sauce, scratch made barbecue sauce. We made scratch made mozzarella sticks. Maybe the cheese wasn't, but like it was crazy. And they bought a special flour just for pizza dough. They bought tomatoes that were a special kind of tomato that was grown on the side of a volcano in Hawaii, like a really high brand tomato and high brand flour. And the idea was it was going to be a New York pizza style restaurant. And I actually loved it. The whole concept was fun. Everyone was chill. It was a lot of work, but the idea of opening up a new place was amazing. However, one of the reasons why it closed down was Groupon. So to try to get the name out there because it was a new restaurant, the owner decided to sign up with Groupon. And what Groupon is that it's a coupon app where you can sign up alongside with it, offer codes and redemptions, and that way customers can come in and order food. And I mean, it's not bad in theory. However, during the summer, he was offering a 50% coupon deal with it. And remember, where I lived at the time was a tourist location, and everyone was using Groupon. So it went from $200 a day to about $7K a day in basically like in a 2-week span. Now the problem with all of this is that remember, we're a tourist town, so everyone's using Groupon. Everyone using Groupon, we gave a 50% discount. And then on top of that, we had to give 30% of that money to Groupon. So in short, for every pizza that we were selling on Groupon, basically only seeing 20% of that. Now, this did help bring in a lot of customers, and our summer rush was really busy, and we had lines out the door, and it was a pizza place. We had a lot of deliveries. But the problem was that because of him using the Groupon app, we didn't actually make any money. So all of that money was just basically thrown out the window for advertising. After the summer ended, the store dropped back down to $250 a week. And I'm not lying there. It was actually $250 a week. It was the only place that didn't care about me being on my phone. And the reason why I call this artificial sales is that just because you're making money doesn't actually mean you're making money. Just because you're having cash flow doesn't necessarily mean that the cash flow is solid. And during that time, I had to ask, did the people actually like the food? Or did they only like the food because it was free? Now, I have a second story, and as you know, it's called artificial growth. So I worked at a place that had a phone app. All restaurants are basically doing that now. Now, this phone app had a point system, which you're pretty familiar with. However, they had a point system where they would offer promotions where you can get 2 times points, sometimes 3 times points, and then on certain occasions, even 4 times points. The problem, though, is that whenever they did the point specials, that is when the most amount of customers came in. And because of that, they were starting to give away free food because of everyone taking advantage of the promotion. And another thing is that this gave it the perception that they were more popular than they actually were. So the company decided to try to expand, and then by expanding, they thought, okay, if we expand alongside the area, then we'll maintain the level of quality and the level of love that customers have for us. But remember, if people are coming in for the promotion, They're not coming in because they like the food. And so as they expanded, they didn't really see an increase in profits. And this is actually how I was able to solidify that graph I mentioned. Because they didn't actually see the profits, they stretched out their labor force as they grew. And because they stretched out their labor force, their customer service dropped and went down. And I call this artificial growth because it looked like they were doing well. It looked like they were doing good. But without the point system, what did they have? And I want you to consider this when it comes to all the phone apps that you have, all the DoorDash deals that you have. Do you actually like the food, or do you pay for the food because of the promotion? And don't get me wrong, if you want to get a cheaper meal because it is cheaper, that's totally in your right. Right? You shouldn't have a holier-than-thou overarching viewpoint of the causes and effects of making a moral decision about what food you buy because somebody is offering a cheaper price. Go for the cheaper thing. If they're offering, take advantage of it. If you are buying the thing because it's cheaper, you're probably not buying it because you enjoy it. And if you're not buying it because you enjoy it, you don't actually like the place as much as you think you do. And if all of society is doing this, then basically all of the numbers are artificial. And if all of the numbers are artificial, that means that there is no substance behind it. And if there is no substance behind it, meaning that people don't actually enjoy it, they only love the deal. They don't love the actual food and the process. You take that deal away, and then all of a sudden, the system falls apart. And I put this in here because when it comes to money, when it comes to the spreadsheets and the numbers and the profit loss statements, those numbers don't tell the whole story. And dare I say it, those numbers can be alternative facts. Because yeah, they're telling you the thing on paper, but behind the scenes, it's not giving you the reason why those numbers are the way that they are. And it doesn't also tell you the cause and effects of how those numbers were achieved. And if you don't consider those ramifications, you're not going to see why the systems fall apart and why they made those decisions and how to fix it.
So you're telling me that if you are a waiter and you work by tips, you're going to sit me down, take my order, not even come one damn time to check on my table.
Okay, I saw this video saying it's $45 a good tip on $359, and let's talk.
Yo, if you don't have money to tip, don't buy the fucking food, bro. You literally...
Alright, let's talk about tipping, okay?
This is your puppy hearing.
And you said you had 4...
Really quickly, I want to explain to you guys why it is so important to tip on your checks when you go out.
We are going to see how much a table of 6 women tipped. First one, total was $51, they left $9.
$15 tip on a $245 fucking bill. So this family of 6 comes in.
It'll be $5.
All right, here you go.
Okay, let me get your change.
It's okay, you can keep the change. Tip.
Oh, thank you.
No.
Do you want to know the last time tipping was implemented? It was during Prohibition in the 1920s. And during that time, hotels and restaurants really struggled to keep their restaurants open because they couldn't afford to because they weren't getting enough income. So they started implementing tipping to try to keep people there and to pay their wages. And when tipping was implemented after COVID in 2020, I only got paid $14 an hour, and that was the max that they were going to pay. I was not going to get above that unless I was in management. and I wasn't going to go into management because I had just stepped down. So the way to keep people happy is to pay them, right? But what do you do if you can't afford to pay them anymore? Well, the workaround is to offer tips. And if you notice in job interviews, if they have a really wide gap at a restaurant, that's probably tips. And I do not understand why most anti-tipping videos and pro-tipping videos don't mention this specific detail about prohibition. Because tips weren't just added because corporations are evil. It was added because restaurants can't afford to pay more. And so the restaurant is trying to find a loophole to be able to pay their employees more. And honestly, like, this happened with other things. Like, advertisements started being put into streaming services after COVID. That's the same premise. So it wasn't just greed. It was honestly just trying to keep the doors open. Like, you can have these two things be true at the same time. Like, and again, tipping was just, for me, a sign that the economy was struggling. And honestly, I'm amazed that we've lasted this long so far. I'm surprised we haven't completely collapsed. Everyone is pretending that everything is okay, and because of that, everything is still running. Oy vey. Oy vey. Oh.
Companies across the country have spent the last 3 years cutting entry-level positions, eliminating middle management layers, and telling themselves that they're being efficient. And they are, right now. But I've been paying attention to the hiring cycle since the early 2000s, and what I'm watching unfold right now is one of the most short-sighted workforce decisions I've ever seen in my entire career.
So, given the state of the economy, the way that employees are now, how management is run and what they expect, and the tightening of labor because of the economy, no one has time to train anybody on anything anymore. They'd rather the numbers be hit than take a loss to effectively train anyone. And the problem is that training people right takes time. It requires a business to slow down, use resources, and to train people well. This is true everywhere. This is true in the food industry. The issue is that if you don't prioritize training, then the employees have to just make up a system that and hope that it works. You know what that sounds like? It sounds like cheating. And if people have to make their own system work, then this affects everything. If you don't train managers well, you can't train employees well. If you don't train managers and employees, then they don't know how to run the system correctly and won't care to change. It's harder to retrain than it is to train. And all of this just ends up hurting customer service in the end. It's very easy for an employee or a manager to be put in a lose-lose situation where they don't have time to train people, and so the system just falls apart because they have to figure it out in the moment. I've actually had to do that 4 or 5 times, and it's really frustrating. Like, I've been in situations where I've tried to call my district manager for an hour because of an emergency, and I couldn't get a hold of them. I don't know why. They were busy. And then I tried calling my store manager. Couldn't get a hold of them. Tried calling the other assistant manager. Couldn't get a hold of them. And so I had to make a call. And I made the best call that I could. One of the jobs I worked at, their turnover rate was so bad that they started hiring managers that couldn't speak English. And the awkwardness was so insane because the job, remember, we hired a lot of teenagers. So if there was ever a customer complaint, the manager would grab a nearby teenager and have the teenager deal with the customer complaint while she just stood there awkwardly. And eventually the teenagers just started dealing with the customers without even grabbing the manager because the manager wasn't any help at all. And it's so annoying because every industry is having this problem. And it's also partially why on job applications, they want you to have master's levels degree, even if you haven't graduated college. The expectations of what an individual needs to get an entry level job has just become so insane because of the competition of the economy and the labor force, and the college system has just gone so insane that everyone's fighting for the same positions that that you already have to have a master's before you can even get an entry levels job. And it's not making sense to anyone. It's a problem. It's a problem. And do you know what all this has led to? That the system is hard to maintain. The restaurant industry has some of the highest turnover rates in the entire industry. That's because it's at the bottom of the industry tier list. No one wants to stay. The workload is too intense. The managers have too high expectations. And the employees you usually end up getting caught with are trash. And so lack of training in all of this just leads to no one wanting to stay either. And it's annoying because I've dealt with this so many times. And then you have a process where first the boss designated by corporate implements a system that is too difficult to implement. Store manager gets on everyone to improve times. Everyone quits. System falls apart. Times are slow. Overtime is required. Food quality sucks, and customer service is trash. Corporate allows overtime and allows help from other stores to help fix the issue. People are rehired, and a sense of stability is recreated. Corporate is still soft on management as the system recovers, so they're able to have their times be over the numbers that are allotted. Then, after a couple weeks, training period is over. Corporate says to lock in, go back to the previous work and previous numbers, and then the cycle continues. And in the middle of all of this, it's very easy for a business to panic hire and hire someone who isn't qualified, has too many scheduling conflicts, and isn't cut out for the job. Like, yeah, you have health issues and this might not be the job for you, and you have special accommodations, so you need to sit down every 15 minutes so you don't pass out. But do you have to do it every time when during the middle of rush hour? Why do I have to do everything? I have a line out the door. Why are you even here? Why can't you support? And since the industry does get all of the outcasts, not everyone is going to get it or understand or be able to master the training. And so because the turnover rate is so high, you'd rather someone who is slow as molasses rather than no one at all. You learn an important lesson. Reliability is more important than skill. And you want to switch people out for better people, but you can't because the systems are too tight to make any changes without collapsing everything and getting the big bosses angry at you because you'll get overtime if you do. And so you put pressure on the people who are good unintentionally because they actually do the job well, but then they get burnt out because they are overworked and get upset on why the slower guy doesn't get in trouble. I'm sorry, the slow guy can't keep up. I'm sorry I rely on you so much. It's because you're actually good at the job. I don't mean it. And so the good guy either slows down or they decide to leave, and so you're stuck with a slow team that can't keep up, and you can't just fire people, one, due to labor laws, and two, if you're a good employee, you want to give them a chance, but it can take literal years, and I mean literal years, for a quality system to get implemented. Fixing the whole process takes time, and everyone only cares about the numbers today. It's so stupid. I've tried explaining this, but you can only pound a bent nail into wood for so long before you realize it isn't getting through. And then, after all is said and done, you discover that it's a trap. You can't leave. Food experience isn't transferable to other industries. It has a negative association on top of it. And you know that if you try going someplace else, if you try applying to other places, that you're going to be second place. And because you don't get PTO, and because you don't get health insurance, and because you have to work 60, 70 hours a week, you're not even sure you can afford to go to another industry. Like, can't do sales. I might go homeless if I can't afford rent. There are only 3 ways to get out of the food industry. One is management. If you become a manager, instead of trying to transfer food experience and food skills, which aren't transferable, you try to transfer the manager skills over and use that as your linchpin. The other is to try to get an entry-level job at an industry that is still fairly low. Call centers are fairly bad, but call centers have more mobility than the food industry. So that is an option, even though I hear it sucks. And the other is to go back to school, if you're willing to go back into debt. Other than that, it's kind of miraculous. So,
Just wanted to say, don't wait too long to follow your dreams. Working 12 hours a day for pennies while the owners and investors of the company make millions off your work. It's a miserable existence.
okay, so a pattern emerges. First, the executives will enact a policy dependent on the competition, on economic circumstance, or government policy. The hope is to try to either make more money or lower costs and save money to make profit. This new policy will be enacted and enforced by the management going forward and will trickle down to the employees. However, as the new policy is being enforced, no one is allowed to question why it should be enforced. At each step, every manager is thinking, I'm here for a paycheck. I'm here to do my job. I don't want to lose my job, and I like money. By the time it gets to the employee, a sense of detachment is created, and the rules are just rules just because they are. This policy goes down to the employees who, due to education and social media, don't care about enacting the policy, or due to the unrealistic expectations of the executives, they don't get implemented well. So the response is that employees will cheat to get the job done because no one wants to get fired. This creates the perception that everything is fine, and so managers will keep doing the same thing. Congratulations! You've discovered the enshittification of everything. And now we have the spiral downwards to mediocrity. This isn't completely 100%. Wise executives will look at employees and see something is off. Sometimes employers will notice that in order to have success, they need to pay a little extra to support everything else. But I want to really emphasize this yet again. You can have both corporate greed and public stupidity simultaneously. Like, you can have these two things be true at the same time. Like, So, the big question from all of this is, how do you fix this? You can't.
Yeah,
Seriously though, how do you change the public perception of the restaurant industry? How do you fix the social media aspects of it? How do you solve education? How do you fix the government? I remember I was once pulled aside by a manager, and this was funny enough, it was part of the place that closed down. And he pulls me aside and he tells me, "Hey, I thank you for the work that you put in. I can teach anyone how to do the work, but I can't teach somebody to care." And that has stuck around with me because it solves so many problems. At the end of the day, too many people just don't care. It's like all of society is using the Overton window to mediocrity. I mean, if you want to care about standards, you actually have to do things to care about standards. If you want to care about society, you actually have to do things to care about society. If you want to care about work, you actually have to do things to care about work. If you want to care about people, you have to do things that actually show you care about people. And this is towards everyone. This is towards the billionaires. This is towards the homeless people. This is towards the ghetto. This is towards the middle class. Like, compassion has to come from somewhere. And the thing is, all of this isn't a byproduct of the system. This is just, the system is a creation of human nature. This is how human nature has decided to land up into itself to have the nice things that we want. Again, I want to remind you that all of this is happening around your food, around the things that you eat. This is explaining this in a very large, grand scale why your food is getting worse. And somewhat tangentially, my big worry about the collapse of everything and what the billionaires call the Great Reset is that propaganda only works so far as people have enough to eat.
Please, sir. I want some more.
When you lower the standards of everything towards mediocrity, alongside lowering people's ability to think critically, and then you make it so people start starving and can't get enough to eat, you don't get mindless drones that just run the systems and become lazy like in WALL-E. You get angry, bitter, feudal tribalists that just hate each other.
Deja poner más robo over here. Deja broken the window.
And then you get a population that you can't control. And at that point, AI won't matter.
All you had to do was pay us enough to live. All you had to do was pay us enough to fucking live.
I just want to thank you if you've reached the end of the video. As you can tell, I've had a lot on my mind and I had a lot to say. I've been wanting to make this video for literal years, but time, status, but thank you for giving me the motivation. I don't plan on doing these all the time. They definitely take a lot of time. And I'm also pretty busy. Also, this is a personality channel, and I still kind of want to focus on that. However, if you have any subjects that you want my opinion on, I'll be happy to share them. This is just what I most understand based on my own life experiences. Everything beyond this is going to be a lot more conjecture. Anyway, keep being awesome. Hope you have a fantastic day. Hope life keeps going well. And I guess I'll see you later. Like and subscribe.